They called her foolish. They said a woman who marries her family's destroyer has already buried her soul. But Adanna, she had no choice. When her village burned and her father was dragged away in chains, one man stood smiling in the firelight. General Kuta, the same man who had taken everything from her. And yet, he was the only one who could save them. So, she made a choice no one understood to marry her enemy. But what no one saw coming was that love, real love, would grow in the ruins of hate. And when death finally came for him, Kuta's last words would break even the hardest hearts. This is not just a story of betrayal, it's the story of a woman who turned war into mercy and hate into tears. Before we dive in, if you love emotional African folktales that touch your heart and make you think, then hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon. Like this video if you believe love can change even the hardest soul, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that forgiveness can be more powerful than revenge. Now, let's begin. The night Adanna's world ended, the moon hid behind the clouds as if even heaven refused to watch. From the hills of Nobi village, smoke curled into the sky. Men shouted. Women screamed. The drums of war thundered through the darkness like angry gods demanding blood. And in the middle of it all, Adanna clutched her mother's hand, trembling as the soldiers broke through their gates. "Where is your father?" one of them barked. Before she could answer, a tall man in a red military coat stepped forward, his eyes cold, smile sharper than a knife. General Kuta, the man every villager feared. The man whose army had taken villages, burned farms, and left widows crying in the dust. Her father, Chivan Kem, was dragged before him, blood running down his face. "You defied the new government," Kuta said calmly, "and your people must pay." Adanna fell to her knees, crying, "Please, spare him. We will do anything." Kuta looked at her, and for a brief moment only a heartbeat, something human, flickered in his eyes. Then, like lightning, his voice cut through the air. "Anything?" he asked. The crowd went silent. He stepped closer, his boots heavy on the dirt, and whispered, "Marry me, and your father lives." The words struck like thunder. Everyone gasped. Mother fainted. Even the soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Donna froze. Marry him, the man who burned her home. The man whose soldiers crushed her brother's fields. But when she looked at her father, broken and weak, she saw his eyes pleading. "Do it, my child." Her world shattered in that moment, but she nodded. The wedding took place 3 days later, not in the village church, but in the governor's hall, surrounded by soldiers instead of family. Her white cloth was borrowed, torn at the edges. Her wrists still carried bruises from the night before. When Kuta placed the ring on her finger, his hand trembled just for a second, but no one noticed. After the vows, he leaned close and said quietly, "Your family is free now." And for the first time, Adanna realized that freedom could still feel like a prison. Days turned into weeks. Adanna lived in Kuta's mansion, a place of gold and silence. Every corner echoed with memories of pain. She spoke little, moved quietly, and prayed every night that God would soften the heart of her enemy. One evening, during a heavy rainstorm, Kuta entered her room. His uniform was soaked, his face tired. He stood by the door for a long moment before saying, "You hate me. I see it in your eyes." Adanna didn't reply. She wanted to scream to curse him, but instead she said softly, "You destroyed my home, General. What else should I feel?" Kuta sighed, walked to the window, and said something she never expected. "I have destroyed too many homes, Adanna. I no longer sleep at night." For the first time, she saw not the monster, but the man behind the armor. He'd told her of his youth, how he was once a village boy who joined the army to protect his people, only to become the very terror he once feared. And as he spoke, Adanna's heart began to twist in confusion. Could a man so cruel still have a soul? Over time, Kuta began to change. He ordered food sent to her parents every week. He released captured villagers. And he stopped raising his voice around her. Sometimes she caught him watching her as she prayed, his face unreadable, as if searching for something he had lost long ago. One evening, he told her, "You remind me of peace, Adanna. And peace is something I forgot how to feel." That night, she wept, Not because she feared him, but because for the first time she pitied him. But whispers began to spread among Kuta's men. They said the general had grown weak, that a woman's love had softened his iron heart. Rebellion brewed in secret, and while Adanna finally began to see hope, danger crept quietly behind their walls. The enemy she once feared most was no longer outside her door. He was now the man beside her, fighting his own demons. And the question that haunted her heart was simple. Could love truly grow from hate? Or was it only a fragile dream waiting to burn again? Morning sunlight slipped through the cracks of the mansion, touching Adanna's face as she watered the small flowers by the window, the only living thing she cared for in that house of ghosts. Behind her, footsteps echoed. General Kuta stood silently, watching her hum a village song. It was a song of hope, the same one she had sung as a child while carrying water from the stream. For the first time, he smiled. Not his cold, commanding smile, but something real, something almost shy. Your voice. He said softly, "It reminds me of peace." Adanna turned, surprised. Peace? You, of all people? Speaking of peace? He didn't argue. He only whispered, "I am tired of blood, Adanna. Tired of being a monster." And just like that, something cracked between them. A silence broke, a wall fell. That evening, as rain danced against the roof, Kuta joined her at the dinner table. No guards, no servants, just the two of them. He told her how his own mother had died in a war he couldn't stop. How every village he burned reminded him of his own. How every cry he heard at night was a ghost he couldn't silence. Adanna listened, not with love yet, but with understanding. And for the first time, she reached out her hand and said quietly, "You can change, Kuta, but only if you choose to." Something flickered in his eyes, the faint spark of a man who wanted redemption. Days passed. The mansion that once echoed with orders and gunfire now echoed with laughter. Small, careful laughter. Kuta released prisoners. He rebuilt destroyed farms, even walked among the villagers, bowing his head in shame. They called him bewitched. They said the girl from Nobi has melted the general's heart. But Adanna didn't care. She had seen a miracle with her own eyes. Hate learning to love. Yet peace never comes without a price. One stormy night, a gunshot tore through the quiet. Rebels Kuta's own men had turned against him, shouting that he had betrayed their cause. Kuta ran to shield Adanna as the doors burst open. Bullets flew. He fought like a lion, not for power, not for pride, but for the woman who once feared him. When the last gun fell silent, the floor was wet with blood. Adanna screamed, holding him in her arms. "Stay with me, please," she cried. "You cannot die now." Kuta coughed, blood at his lips, and smiled faintly. "Adanna, you saved my soul." She shook her head, tears falling. "You destroyed everything." His voice trembled. "Yes. But you taught me what love means." He touched her cheek gently. "Promise me, forgive me, and tell them I died loving you." Then his hand went still. The next morning, the sun rose over Nobi village. Adanna buried him under the old palm tree, the same place he had first promised her father peace. She laid his uniform beside him, covered in the flowers she had grown. The villagers came not to curse, but to witness something rare. An enemy turned hero. And a woman whose love had broken a chain of hate. From that day, Adanna became known as the Widowed Mercy. Children whispered her name in prayers. Women told her story under moonlight. They said her tears watered the soil that brought peace to the land. And when people asked her why she forgave the man who destroyed her world, she would smile sadly and say, "Because sometimes forgiveness is the only war love knows how to win." So, what do you think, my friend? Could you ever love or even forgive the person who destroyed your world? Donna's story reminds us that love doesn't always come from comfort. Sometimes it's born from ashes, from pain, from impossible choices. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button to support more African folktales. Subscribe if you believe love and forgiveness still have power in this world. And share this story with someone who needs a reminder that even in hate, there's room for healing. Because, in the end, she married her enemy, but he died loving her. And maybe that's how peace finally found its name.